welcome to Beyond the Pour, crafted by California Tastings. I'm Nilu, your sommelier host, uncorking stories from visionary sommeliers, winemakers, chefs, mixologists, and all those people shaping our world. Today we're thrilled to sit down with Jack Sporer, a trailblazer in Sonoma Valley's natural wine movement. As the manager of Magnolia Wine Services and the visionary behind Fresco Wine, Jack is redefining winemaking with commitment to minimal intervention wines, regenerative farming, and building community through collaboration. Now, if that was a lot of information in that sentence, he's going to break it down for us. Welcome, Jack. How are you? So happy you're here.
Hi, Nilu. Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
So happy that you're here. My gosh, when I found you on the internet, and then found out that you're just like half an hour away from my house, and then to read about all the amazing things you're doing, I got super excited. Um, and then, creating this podcast, which I've been thinking about forever, and like we've recorded like a few
Mhm.
now. I'm like, we need to find out more about what natural wines are. There's so much conversation about it, obviously, but I don't know if we're knowing the correct information. So I want to just have you, first of all, tell us where it all started, how you got into this, and then what are those words that I just said in the introduction?
Okay. Yeah, it's a
Welcome.
lot. It's a lot. I'll start talking about myself. I grew up in San Francisco, but with family in Sonoma Valley, where I am now. So I'd spend weekends in Sonoma, and it was, a charmed lifestyle. Uh, but came to know my folks had a an old vineyard that back in 2000 my uncle started taking over. He was a longtime winemaker, so he started farming that, started making the wine from it. So that's the family wine. I never really thought I'd be in wine, but I went off to study at university, got a biology degree, came back, didn't know what I wanted to do, sort of fell into working a harvest about 15 years ago and just loved it. And so from there, I've been doing wine since. And back in 2019, I decided to launch my own brand. And kind of along the same lines in 2020, my uncle and I opened up a custom crush winery together called Magnolia, which is a collaborative winery where we make wines for ourselves and about 2 dozen other brands, most of them leaning on the lower intervention, organic, and natural side of the winemaking spectrum. So, to dive in a little bit on what natural wine is, to me, I see it as a spectrum. It's uh, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Sort of the most extreme, most natural, you might say, way of making this type of wine is what's termed 0-0. So that's no sulfur, nothing added and nothing taken away. So that things that would be added are things, generally you hear about sulfur. You'll hear about, you might not hear about it, but it's often in there would be a little bit of a water addition or some tartaric acid to correct the pH, um, or yeast, cultured yeast that you can buy, or yeast nutrients. And then there's beyond that a host of other things you can add to a wine to sort of have more control on the winemaking. And you ideally end up with something that, if you're a conventional, traditional winemaker, you have a little, you know how the wine is generally going to taste at the end based on how you sort of your protocols are written. The way I see it, that is totally a legitimate way to make wine. But for the wines that I enjoy and that I want to talk about, I don't really want to have to like have compunctions about telling people what I added to the wine,
Yeah.
and just transparency. And then, it's also I think more compelling if you can make a wine without a bunch of additives. Everything you need to make a wine is there in the grape when it
Okay.
comes.
Okay.
And then just further on to removals would just be like filtrations or finings, which again are fine, totally legitimate, but not really. To me, they take more out of the wine than you would definitely would I would traditionally want to drink. So, and then overarching all that, the most important thing about what I do and natural wine is that the grapes are made with organically farmed grapes.
Yeah.
Sorry, the wine is made with organically farmed grapes.
I love it. I love it. So not only do you get these grapes from organically grown vineyards, but then you're taking it into the production facility. And when you say, so for a lot of people that don't know how wine's made, we're
Yeah,
trying to just kind of really break it down. This is not for the psalm world. This is
right.
for um, people that want to know what is in my wine? What am I drinking? Is it okay for me to drink this?
Yeah.
And when you say no fining, no filtering, what do you mean? Can you explain that?
Sure. Okay, so wine is a very complex liquid. Uh, Super, we still don't really understand it fully. Um, and sometimes a wine might have a bit of haziness to it. A couple reasons could be for that. One would be that it hasn't been filtered. So there's some sediment that forms or that is left in the bottom of the bottle. The sediment is healthy, totally, not bad for you at all. But I think, the modern consumer might go to the store and buy a bottle of wine, and if it's got a bunch of cloudiness into it, they might not. It might be off-putting. If you don't really know what's going on, you might think it's gone off in some way. Um, Generally, as an aside, all these additives and basically any bottle of wine is going to be safe to consume from like a health standpoint. I mean,
Yeah,
alcohol notwithstanding, it's like it's not going to be pathogenic or there's nothing going to be that's going to be hurt you from it beyond what is just
yeah,
the alcohol in there. So
yeah,
that's so if you're drinking natural wine, the wines are more likely to be a bit hazy.
yeah,
Another thing you might do is fine the wine, which is basically adding like a charged particle like bentonite clay or actually egg whites
yeah.
sometimes. And what those do is those attach to things in the wine that are opposite charge. So for bentonite, I'm pretty sure it's negatively charged.
Right,
So anything that's got a positive charge in it, which is a lot of microbes or anything that's sort of like comes from a living organism, would attach to it and then fall out of solution. So then you can rack the wine off the sediment at the bottom, and so then your wine is less likely to change color in the bottle uh,
right.
or go
Okay.
hazy. It might start clean and then go hazy. So it's
Yeah.
just to protect your wine, and basically virtually all the big sort of really big brands are going to have some fining or filtration. Um,
Is it more about what the consumer wants to see, the clarity, the clearness in the bottle, as opposed to, leaving, maybe I'm wrong, but some of the lees kind of sit in there maybe or don't, I'm not sure. But definitely sediments, you're trying to get rid of the sediments. The clarity in the bottle makes it look nicer and what the consumer enjoys.
yeah,
Is it because of that we're doing it? And then the second part I want to ask, when we say vegan, sometimes what they're using in the filtering could be not vegan per se.
yeah, that's correct. So I would say it's kind of customer driven, and then there's kind of in this feedback loop. So back in I would say probably 50 years ago, almost all wines were natural. There weren't all these winemaking aids. They didn't have cultured yeast necessarily that you could buy. They didn't have filters that were readily available. So almost all the wines are natural. And consequently, you might go to the wine shop, buy a bottle, and it has gone off. It's vinegar or has some other flaw. And
Yeah.
so sort of like bit by bit, as the consumer grew to expect more stable, clean wine, uh, the producers sort of were able to like use technology to meet that desire. So kind of like one drew the other to the other, and then but we got so far out to where people were being so conservative in their winemaking that like the wines were, virtually all tasting the same in my mind. And so natural wine kind of came out as this like wild like pendulum swing back to the old days of making wine, which can be very compelling, but you can also go to the store and buy a wine that tastes awful,
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
it's kind of it makes it harder and maybe not as user friendly, but at the same time, I think ideally more compelling.
When you
Um,
say makes it taste some wines, obviously, we've got a wide range of wines out there.
sure.
But the word everybody uses for natural wine, and this is not me, I'm just saying what I hear.
Hmm.
Funky,
Sure.
kind of doesn't have that perfumey aroma that we're used to some of the wines having. What is that from? And that's okay, you're saying.
Yeah, so we haven't really touched on maybe the major additive that is talked about the most in regards to natural wine, which is sulfur.
Yeah.
Um,
That was my
and
next
there's
question. Yeah.
yeah, and so there's a ton of reasons you might add sulfur. I use it actually in most of my wines, but at a very low dose,
Yeah.
because sulfur and all these other additives and fining agents, etc., or many of them, are used to control microbial life. So if you are fining or filtering a wine, often you're removing some of the microbes that are in there, and that would include Brettanomyces or
Mm.
Brett, which is
Mm-hmm.
one thing that is often found in unsulfured wines that can make a wine funky.
Right.
Uh, and that kind of gives like a barnyard or like leathery thing, which in like the right dose can be really nice. And when
Yeah.
it's overbearing, it's really overbearing and tastes just like that one chemical and
Yeah.
compound, um, not like all the other beautiful things that a wine might contain, beautiful flavors and aromas. So funk is from and filtration similar. It removes microbes and so keeps wine from spoiling. And so if
Yeah.
your wine has that and you don't take action, your wine is very likely going to taste funky. So while there are plenty of natural wines that I think are very bright, fresh, and clean, it's definitely true that it's more normal to have wines from that subset to taste funky.
And then Jack, the conversation around the sulfites that you just mentioned, when
Hmm.
people say they get headaches and they think it's because of the sulfites, do you agree that's the reason they're getting headaches? Or is that just a myth now that we've come up with because we don't know exactly what's in the wine?
So it's complicated. There's a very small percentage of people who do have sulfite sensitivities, but that is less than 1%, maybe way
Mm,
less.
yeah.
And
Okay.
similarly, there's more sulfur in, for example, dried fruit or frozen French fries. Uh, there's
Wow.
more free sulfur in a lot of those sort of uh, foods that are more common than you might than there are in wine. Maybe by a factor, of a large factor. So that is largely a myth, I would say. One thing that for sure can give you a headache is alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and but in my experience, drinking natural wine and drinking traditional conventional wine, the analogy for me is if I go to my local butcher and buy ground beef from a cow that was grass fed, that was organic, and I go to my baker and I get a nice hamburger bun and have local tomatoes and whatever, and grill my own hamburger at home. That's not going to make me feel nearly it's going to make me feel way better than if I go to fast food and get
Yeah.
a hamburger there. And I'm not saying I
Right.
don't eat fast food sometimes, but it's not like I recognize that it's not the same. It's
Yeah.
not good for me. Whereas, the food that is grown locally and holistically is good for me.
I love
So
that. That's a great analogy. And I think right now we're all about trying to figure out what's good for us, right? And we're
right.
all trying to what got you so in 2019 you bought you bought Magnolia crush pad with your
Yeah,
uncle?
yeah, 2020 to be exact, but I was working here
2020?
in 2019.
Yeah. So was it already up and running, the
Yeah,
crush
so
pad
we
facility?
it was a different winery, a different custom
Okay.
crush winery, but in
Yeah.
the same space. So I worked here, and my uncle was a client here. So he'd been here
Okay.
for
Got
15
it.
years,
Mm.
and I worked, um, and I was working there. I had worked there previously. I was back managing it, and the previous owner wanted to put it up for sale, and
Yeah.
we were looking around for like, you know, talking about maybe building a winery at the vineyard and looking at
Yeah.
other places, and nothing really seemed like as a very good deal compared to
This
um,
was.
what this was. And we didn't have to move, so we just
Yeah.
bought some new tanks, sort of moved things around to be a little more organized, shrunk the footprint a bit, and then made and then got our and then sort of invited some more like-minded clientele in because
Mm-hmm.
historically it hadn't been like a very collaborative space, and so we wanted it to be more a space where small, younger winemakers could come in and sort of learn from each other.
I love it. I love it. So you're managing that, and then while you were doing that, you said, I'm going to come up with my own label. And the
Right.
label is Fresco, but it
Fresco,
actually
yeah.
means fresh, right? You're
Yeah, it's short.
like
It's short
fresh.
for the Fresh Wine Company, which is sort of what
Yeah.
I wanted to call it. But it's I would say that most of the good names are taken at this point. So
It's difficult to find a name that works these days, like domain
exactly.
names and this and that. So I get it. It's not easy. But Fresco, I love that. That's a great name. Now, you have worked in, and I'm presuming as a winemaker or somebody in the production facility, um, I believe like Bedrock Wine,
Sure. Yep.
Williams Cellium,
Chevrolet. Yeah.
Chapeau. I
And
mean, these are big names.
yeah. I mean, I really wanted to target, build my career working with great winemakers, and I really love, California history. So all those are really historical brands
Yeah.
that I think have made their mark in
Yeah.
the California winemaking regime, and so I, wanted to like understand how it was done at the really classic
Yeah.
OG wineries,
There you
and that,
go. Those are OG wineries. I love
yeah,
it. Now, is Bedrock still with you guys in Magnolia?
they're not at Magnolia, but they're right across the street,
They're across
right
the
across
street.
the
Okay,
parking
I
lot.
love their
Yeah, so
wines. Yeah.
yeah, we share equipment sometimes, and we
Yeah.
actually I sublease a little bit of warehouse space to them, and then they sell me grapes. So
I
we're like
love it.
we're connected. Yeah, they're the best.
You're so much about collaboration. And
Hmm.
tell me about the bottles because I believe you're putting on the back of these bottles the name of the vineyards you're getting these the grapes that you're utilizing, giving them some a shout out to
Right.
those vineyards a little bit, I guess. Is that your
Yeah,
thought
so
there?
we put I put for the most part for all the single vineyard stuff I put the grower's name on the back
Nice.
label rather
I
than
love
my own.
that. Yeah.
It's we're trying to be a farming first wine brand, right? Try
Yeah.
express the site through the farming, uh, and then the winemaking ideally is more transparent.
Right.
I think sort of historically a lot of winemakers want to put their mark on the bottle, and they want to put make it be like this is my brand's wine. This is what sort of I'm like I'm trying to taste the space, the place, the way the wines are made or are farmed, and then the winemaking without making added additions, it becomes more transparent.
I love
Um,
it. Transparency is a really good thing, I think, in whatever we do. And you're really pushing that, which is really, really cool. Um, so you describe am I saying this right? Is it Fresco?
Fresco, yeah.
Okay. As crafting wines for the people, appealing to both novices and enthusiasts. Now, how do you design wines that are approachable yet reflective of Sonoma's distinctive terroir?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the first way to just improve access is to keep prices low. Um, because it's really hard to uh, interest someone who's not really a big wine consumer in spending $50 on a bottle of wine. I
Right.
mean, even the wine, my wines, a lot of them are at $29, and that's not even a easy sell for a lot of people. But compared to
Sure.
what a lot of my competitors are doing in Snow Valley, I would say
Yeah.
it's pretty affordable. Um,
Yeah.
Being very careful to work with growers that are, conscious of the long-term plan and aren't going to just raise prices every year that they can. Um, and
I
knowing
love
that
that.
I'm with them in the long term too, and that I'm hoping to, I want to make sure it's financially feasible for them to continue farming. So we have to find an accord. A lot of people are the growers I work with are fairly generous in their payment terms. So
Yeah.
it's wine is a crazy thing as an
Yeah.
industry where I'll buy grapes this year and I'll sell them 2.5, 3 years from now. Um,
Grapes or the
yeah,
juice?
I'll sell the wine. So it's
The
like
wine. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I put money in 2020 and I'm not getting out till 2023. So
Right. Oh my
it's a
gosh.
crazy slow way to sort of make money. Most businesses the turnaround is much quicker. Um,
This is a slow path for sure. And with wines that have to sit a little bit, like maybe I don't know if you do Pinot Noirs and Rosés. I think you do, and Pinot Noirs and Cabs and
some of them,
Malbecs and
yeah.
this and that. You got to let them sit for sure. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to spend all this money right now, wait
Yeah.
for it to give me a turnaround. But your whole thought is that we're creating a community here
Yeah,
with
exactly
different.
right.
Right. I love that.
So yeah, whether it's the winery, which is collaborative, working with the grape growers, who again we're collaborating with, and then where we sell the wine too is also collaborative. We have a shared tasting room in Sonoma, right off the plaza called Dose Bar, and that it functions more like a wine bar. It's legally a tasting room, so you can bring your kids, and it's very, but it's not so fancy. It's very accessible. You walk in, you can get a glass of wine, or you can do you can do a tasting. Mostly we do like events, community events. We do like collage night, and um, sometimes we'll have food there, music. But generally,
Very nice.
the events are free, and then you just buy the wine. So
So
pretty.
everybody, is it everybody that's in Magnolia making wine, Magnolia Crush Pad? Do they all offer their wines at Dose?
Not all of us, but some of
Yeah,
us. Yeah.
some of you. Okay. And what's because Sonoma the square you're saying Sonoma square. What's next to you guys on either side of you? Just I'm trying to because I've got to come
Yeah, so
visit.
so it's the main street that runs right into the square. That's Broadway.
Yeah.
And as you are going up the square to up Broadway, it's on the left if you're going to the plaza. There's a cider bar called Palm right there,
Huh? Uh-huh.
and then next to us is the Chase Bank, which is right on the corner.
The Chase Bank.
Um,
Okay, I think I know where
So
that is.
we're
Absolutely.
we're like right off the square, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful old Oddfellows building, which is like it's like 100 years old and
Oh wow.
beautiful exposed brick. Kind of feels like going to a California Roadhouse, but they serve natural
Yeah.
wine instead of cheap beer. So
How fun is that? Because how many natural wine bars are I know in Berkeley and this and that, there's a lot of them. They've been
yeah,
around for the last couple of years. How many in Sonoma would you say, or Sonoma County even?
yeah. Okay, the county is starting to sort of become a thing, but like most things, Sonoma Valley is slower.
Yeah.
Um, so there's ours and Palm does some natural. There's like three or four. Valley
On the
Bar and
square?
Bottle, yeah, is sort of the OG, the first one to do it, the
Yeah.
restaurant, and then there's a couple tasting rooms that are sort of lean natty as well.
And you're
Um,
seeing more local
Starting to
people
really
coming
come
in?
in, yeah, yeah, and our
Yeah.
business is really built off locals. Like we love tourists,
Yeah.
and they come in sometimes, but what's I think gives me a lot of hope is that we're built off sort of the local people coming in,
I love
and
that. And that's a great source of business because tourism is great, but when it goes down, you're like,
yeah,
oh God, what is
and every winter
happening?
it goes down,
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it could be great for a bit. But what are you thinking, looking forward, looking ahead 5 years, I kind of asked this question. We're in kind of difficult times right now, I feel like, with the wine world, especially the Napa Sonoma area.
yeah.
Not as much like again, tourism is down. Um, what do you see looking ahead in the next 5 years, maybe? What are your goals for Fresco and Magnolia, Crush Pad, wine services? Um, and do you hope to build, um, and what's your legacy and what are you hoping to build
Hmm.
in Sonoma kind of to increase visibility and stuff? Or maybe
Yeah.
you're not. I don't know.
No, I definitely am. I think, Sonoma Valley is this really special little space. It's one of the oldest places in California to have professional grape growing outside of the missions.
Hmm.
So it's got 200 years of history. So I want to add on to that. And really only in the last 30 or 40 years has the agriculture here been not organic since, maybe 60 years, but it's really a blip. And so I want to
Okay.
bring it back to all organics. Everything
Love
I
it.
do is farmed with organics as the baseline and then improving to regenerative farming,
Yep.
going beyond organics. Uh, and there's a lot of whether they're making natural wine or more traditional winemakers. There's actually a pretty good groundswell of movement of folks in Sonoma Valley farming correctly, holistically,
Yep.
and so we're getting a lot of people who are who are kind of
Joining
interested in that. So it
joining
would
the
be great
group.
to
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be great to just like make Sonoma organic, like
Right?
as a
Make
ABA,
yeah.
because it's just we all have to live here. We have to drink the water,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
we have the animals, the flora and fauna and the environment. And if you keep spraying poison on your on your land, it's not gonna maintain, right? You're gonna lose
Yeah.
soil, you're gonna lose soil health, you can lose water.
Yeah.
So trying to convince some of the bigger growers that actually being organic isn't a huge cost. It's actually if you take the long term view, it's the better and it's the obvious option. And so just trying to, but it's obviously hard from an accounting standpoint. So trying to
Yeah.
get people to understand that like once you make that hop, you make
Yeah.
the jump, it starts to pencil out. But when you're like sitting on the other side,
Yeah.
I understand why people are scared. So it would be great to have like a movement to sort of move off of Roundup, move off of herbicide, move off of
My
synthetic.
gosh, we need that
Yeah,
all gone for sure. God knows what's going to people's bodies, and when they think, oh, I'm having a nice glass of wine, and um, does it? You don't have to be organic certified. You can just have the land be kind of farmed organically, right?
that's
That would be
correct.
great too.
Yeah, no, and so it's tough because if I can personally convince people that my wines are organic, but when you look at the bottle, it doesn't necessarily have any certifications on it, so
Right.
that can be problematic for like large scale adoption. But in general, it's just not been shown that you get the proper return for being organic.
Yeah,
It's a
sad.
pretty expensive and time intensive uh, movement to make, certification to get, and so unless you're sort of a bigger company, it doesn't
Yeah.
really pencil out. And I work
So
with a
you
lot of
don't
small.
need to, what you're saying is just do it organically, farm the land
Most
organically.
importantly is to make that transition. I think in general it'd be great to have more certification. One of the vineyards I work with just got certified, and it's an
Yeah.
awesome. It's really important to do,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah, for
but
sure.
um, but at the same time, what are you going to do? It has to be affordable, and
Has to
so
has to work financially for sure. I have one question that I want to ask you, the last question that um I ask, this is my well, we've recorded about 10 podcasts, but We've posted about, I think, four. But I ask everybody this question because I think you find out a lot about somebody through music. Last question is when you're in the production facility and you're doing what you love to do, um, what's a song that would relay kind of the vibe that's in or going on over
Uh,
there or what you're feeling? Can you give us
oh,
that?
yeah. I mean, I love almost all genres of music, but the one that really speaks to me these days is like alternative country music. So not the pop stuff you hear on the radio, but more the soulful Americana music that is, got good guitars, great lyrics, storytelling. Um, and so that for me is Tyler Childers. He's kind of my favorite right now.
Love
Um,
it.
yeah, so
Okay.
it's beautiful music. He's from West Virginia, but
Yeah,
rural America is like rural America in a lot of ways, and we're
that's it.
even though we're making sort of a high-end product, it's still it's still a rural experience living out here making the wine.
Yeah, I mean it's after all it's grapes and it's a little bit of farming and a little bit of creativity
And a
and
lot of
then
hard work.
passion and a
Yeah,
lot of hard work. No joke. I mean,
yeah,
people don't realize how much work goes into that beautiful bottle that comes out into the store or the, wine in the winery. But you are
exactly.
definitely leading a path forward and that's so interesting, and I would love to come back to you in a few months and chat more to see how
Yeah,
this is going. And meanwhile, I'd love to stop by Dos
Dose Bar, you got it. Yep.
Dos Bar. You got it in Sonoma. Anyways, thank you so much, Jack Sporer. You're amazing. Thanks for taking time with me
Thank
on
you for
Beyond the
having me.
Pour. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jack.
See you next time.